that have been made since the last meeting.
Yeah, thank you. So last time we met, we had a collaborative session on changes that the commissioners and the school board would like to see to the joint maps. Walking through the changes by memory, apologize, I don't have my notes in front of me. Ms. Bennett, who lives in Lillington, wanted to confirm that certain parts of West McNeil Street were still in District 1, and I believe we confirmed that. Mr. Powell, who's in District 2, wanted to make some adjustments around Irwin to try to move, I think, some of his childhood neighborhood that surrounded his home into District 2. We were able to affect that change. Another change to District 2 was trying to move the, I guess, most eastern section of Harnett County into District 2. I believe that's the way it is under the current map. Because of the population size of District 2, that change was not possible. Moving that size of a land tract into District 2 would have pushed it over the limits. So we attempted that change, but we're not able to make it. Beyond that, we were looking at changes to District 3. I believe Mr. Lemons wanted to move part of his surrounding neighborhood into District 3 as well. We were able to make that change. Mr. Matthews, I believe your neighborhood, Keith Hill, was not fully in District 3. We were able to move that into District 3 as requested. Then there were changes to District 4, some surrounding Anger, which we were able to make. There was a request to move part of Lillington into another district. The original request that was made population-wise was not feasible, so we attempted that change but could not make it. There was also a request to move what I would call the southwestern part of District 4 potentially into one of the southwestern districts, whether it be 1 or 5. Because of population restrictions, we were not able to affect that change. Lastly, Mr. Nickel had requests regarding District 1 and District 5, in particular Coachman Way, which I believe is in a neighborhood. The neighborhood was entirely in District 5 except for, I guess, this narrow sliver of Coachman's Way. We were able to move Coachman Way and the surrounding tract into District 5 to keep that neighborhood intact. There was also a request to explore whether or not we could remove what I'll call kind of the tentacle of District 1 that reaches into District 5. And because of the Voting Rights Act and our obligations to try to maximize the minority district in District 1, we were not able to remove that tentacle because it actually reaches into several rather populous black communities in the southwestern corner. So those were all the changes that we attempted to make. Most of them were successful. Some of them were not feasible because of population and demographic restrictions. And so that is District 4. What is up in front of the room is District 5. Plan 5. Plan 5 is identical to Plan 4 with the exception of 2 changes. The area surrounding, I guess, northwestern Lillington was moved into District 3 to kind of extend that reach. And then in exchange for moving additional population into District 3, some of the areas surrounding Anger and Mr. Weatherspoon's, I guess, part of the county were moved into District 4 to kind of consolidate the area around where he lives. And so those are the only 2 changes. They were offsetting changes, so they weren't meaningful from a legal perspective. I think they were trying to be mindful of communities of interest and population numbers, and so we were able to make those changes. But again, aside from Lillington and Anger and those offsetting changes we made, Plan 4 and Plan 5 are identical. Right. And I'm happy to receive any questions. Otherwise, I guess I will yield the podium to the public.
Any questions from the commissioners or any of our Board of Education members who are here?
Yes,
Commissioner McCoy.
I had a concern. I just wanted to make sure that it was addressed. Concern of removing in Lillington, Water Lane, Old Road, I think that's 121, coming out of Lillington.
Okay.
And the West Old Road coming out of Lillington, 121. That's right in the town of Lillington, right in my district, District 1. And I was crossing. That's right in my town because I see you have drawn that into District 4. Am I not right or am I wrong?
So what you will find, Ms. McCoy, is when District 1's footprint in Lillington, right, the area that it captures, has not changed over all the iterations of the map. We have retained its consistency because we are being very mindful to make sure we capture the black communities in Lillington for BRA purposes. So I'm not exactly sure where those streets are among the lines, but I can say from version 1 to version 5, Lillington's footprint for District 1 has not changed. And so, and I believe it matched the current footprint for District 1 for obvious reasons as well. So I'd have to check the details.
Yes, please, because it was so narrowly drawn.
Yes, ma'am.
That little orange area was so narrowly drawn. I know it because I've worked those areas for many years.
Yes, ma'am.
And I cannot see why they would be going into District 4.
Yes, ma'am.
So, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners or Board of Education members? Hearing none, then, Mr. Shire, thank you. We will open the floor for public comments. Again, if you'd like to speak, please approach the podium, state your name and residential address. Good morning, Mr. Farina.
Good morning, sir. My name is Roger Farina. I live at 306 Pine Valley Lane in Sanford. Before I start, I speak for myself. I'm not representing anybody else. If anything I say during my discussion offends anybody, I apologize up front. It's not my intent to do so. I'm trying to stick exactly to math and the numbers. I'm not a lawyer. I've done my best doing some research and stuff like that, and I hope everything I looked up was correct. And the other part is I don't mean to point any fingers to anybody. It's more of a general kind of statement of what I want to discuss. I represent I live in Western Harnett County, and that's what I stand here to represent. So, and I actually made a PowerPoint presentation too. So, some things I mention will be specific, some things will be general, and some will be my feelings from living in Harnett County since April of 2004. I've done research the best way I know how, with the limited time and limited information available. There's a lot of information to digest, so forgive me if the numbers and procedures are slightly wrong, but I will be as factual as I can. I live in Barbecue, Spout Springs, Western Harnett. I stand here speaking for what I believe in is right for my local community. We have had some great things happen to us here in Harnett County since I moved here. My youngest was born here. My kids all went to school here. In fact, my oldest graduates next month from Campbell because we took advantage of what Harnett County schools provide. She also has an associate's degree from Central Carolina Community College. My middle daughter's a sophomore at NC State, and my youngest graduates from high school. And my wife is a teacher. I was there when the Bowie Creek Astros won the only professional sports championship in Harnett County during a hurricane, no less. I've served the community both on the school board and on the Economic Development Committee. To say I'm all in for Harnett County is an understatement. I retired from the military here, and we chose Harnett County as a home. One thing that sticks out for me is that even though on May 22nd of next year, I will have lived in Harnett County for one day longer than I did my entire time when I grew up in New York, when I left for the Army on July 31st, 1981. And everybody will still call me a Yankee, and I'll be an outsider in this county. However, I'm going to show you in the following presentation that I'm not alone. I'm going to show you that when the power of the people awaken, amazing things can happen. We were promised things. We were promised a new high school to supplement the almost 45-year-old high school we have now. But there are two, you know the ones, Western Harnett High and her sister, Harnett Central. These schools might have shelf lives of another 30 years. We must fix that problem. Why aren't we addressing them now? Yeah, the sales tax thing was a great promise. I hear the money went to the new school in Benhaven. Now, it replaced that almost 100-year-old school and did not give us a new school. A new building, yes, but not a new school. We were promised industry in the relatively abandoned Western Harnett Industrial Park. yet it sat idle for the majority of the time I've lived here. We have things that go on in this county that are so obvious and need fixing. I can understand why they haven't gotten fixed. I want industry and commerce that my daughters can go out and not just get jobs or careers. I want industry and commerce, while it's convenient, not just the multitude of fast food restaurants that lie along Spring Lake North Highway, better known as Highway 87. This country around, the counties around us has prospered. Amazon, Google, in Johnson County, in Chatham County, and we out by in the west have gotten a second Hardee's. What is happening? My feeling from being part of this community is that the leaders in this county are still trying to keep us, especially in Barbecue, Anderson Creek, Johnsonville townships, in the bygone era. Understand this isn't a problem to blame any group of commissioners. It's an ongoing, decades-old problem, at least for the 17 years I've lived here. But I challenge us all to fix them. I'm going to show you why these things are happening and why they need to be fixed. What will this accomplish? Provide better representation of our county leaders to all our citizens in the county as a whole, and to meet the population growth that has occurred in Western Harnett over the last 10 years. To aid in the growth of the county, especially Western Harnett, in the ways of economic and educational opportunities, and to better compete with those counties and cities around us. Anyway, look at our population. I have this slide. It's from the Census Bureau. Harnett County sits at 133,568. Dunn is at 8,446. Angier 5,265. Spout Springs CDP is 11,040. Anderson Creek CDP is 13,636. What's a CDP? A census designated place, also known as an unincorporated town. Census has given the entity the same prominence as it does census places, otherwise known as town. More on that later. Next slide, please. First thing first, boundaries across this county need to change, especially in my community. The leaders and citizens need to be open to this fact. The first thing that needs to happen is this board needs to petition the state to postpone the primary elections and committee filing date until we get this resolved properly. To thrust this upon the community with little notice nor the ability to give significant feedback is abhorrent. Yes, I know the census numbers were late, but we need to adjust accordingly to that action by requesting relief from the state. 29 days until filing starts, 40 days until filing ends, 100 days until early voting starts, and 121 days until primary election day. We simply do not have enough time to set things right with these districts. Next slide, please. One thing that should have been done weeks ago is that in the agenda packet for this meeting, there should be proposed redistricting maps so that we, of the people, could review them. I went on the county website on Saturday night to see if they were part of the agenda. They were not. This is a screenshot from the website. I looked through the county pages. I could not find the proposed maps to see how badly the legal minds dissected Lexington Plantation. How do we have a community public hearing and not provide the information to the public? From what I've been told, the school board was not even given a version of when the body was meeting with the contracted lawyers. I'm going to start off discussing topics that will set up why we need to address the issues with redistricting in a certain way. I will address issues that deal with the 200 square miles of Western Harnett. I will discuss issues leading up to redistricting. While I know issues like the Northwest Harnett water plant and the Dunn sewer moratorium are important, I'm here before you to talk about the communities of Anderson Creek, Barbecue, and Johnsonville Township. Essentially, every boundary that defines our community at the county level and above does not allow for our community to prosper and grow. Slide 4. To start with, I'm going to talk about zip codes. I bring this up for a reason, and as I get into my presentation, I'll call back to the zip codes to further a point. The zip codes that cover our areas all belong to cities and other counties. Sanford is in Lee, Cameron is in Moore. Spring Lake is in Cumberland. We have areas that touch Bun Level, Broadway, and Lillington. I know the zip code issue is a detriment because one time I reached out to McDonald's to tell them, hey, we need a Mickey D's here. She said, what was my zip code? I told her 27332. She stated, you already have 2 McDonald's. I said, no, look south, look south. That's up in the city of Sanford. I eventually had her meet me here in the Food Line parking lot on Highway 87, and I said, this is where your ring study needs to start with. The first boundary that is messed up is our zip codes. That is a federal issue, I understand, but it needs to be mentioned so far. To be mentioned here. So far we have, next slide. So far we have rescheduling primaries, filing dates, and fixed the zip codes. Next slide, please. Next, let's talk about the voting precincts. There are 2,700 precincts in North Carolina. 13 of them are in Harnett. You may have heard me proudly speak in the past about how proud I am that my home precinct of Barbecue has risen over the years to become the 5th overall most voted precinct in North Carolina. You can see on the chart in the bottom right on the screen here that we're 5th overall, and you can look at some of the other bigger precincts there in bigger cities than we are. 5th out of 2,074. Pretty impressive. I thought so too. But then I realized something. How could any precinct in Harnett County be in the top 5? How could we be in the top 50? How could we be in the top 500? Then it dawned on me. Well, our community is heavily made up of oath keepers such as military, police, and fire that embrace this civic duty to vote. I realize we are too big. Next slide, please. What does it mean that we're too big? Let's establish some numbers here. The top number on this chart is the total population, and the bottom number is voting age population. According to the 2020 census, Harnett County has 133,568 people. I think we all believe we're going to be bigger than this 133,000, but this is the official number that we have to work with. Let's establish two numbers based on the current boundaries in our county. 13 voting precincts and 5 commissioner districts. When I say commissioner districts, I'm also referring to the school board member districts, as both boards voted to nest themselves together. 133,568 divided by 13 precincts equals 10,275 people. 133,568 divided by 5 commissioner districts equals 26,704 people. An average voting precinct in Harnett County should have 10,000 people in it. Total population in Barbecue voting precinct, 24,663. Do you understand that? There's 24,000 people in Barbecue voting precinct, and the average should be 10,000. We're too big. Anderson Creek is 18,163. Johnsonville is 15,127. Incidentally, all three precincts located in Western Harnett and are the 3 largest voting precincts in Harnett County. The next largest is Black River at 11,588. The smallest 3 precincts are Lillington with 5,027, East Aversboro with 4,927, and the smallest is Stewart's Creek with 3,942. Barbecue precinct has, like I said, 24,663. Stewart's Creek has 3,942. That's a difference of 20,721, or roughly twice the amount of the average precinct in Harnett County should be. In Western Harnett, lines are always long for elections. The wait sometimes is incredible. In 2008, when President Obama was elected, the wait was 8 hours. I know, I was there. It went down the hallway of Western Harnett, from the gym, down the hallway, into the front, back out to the side of the building, and across the front. 8 hours that people had to wait. If there's a discrepancy in polling of any kind that causes a recount, it's not fair that these 3 precincts must have so many ballots to review. Again, I experienced this firsthand during some of the statewide recounts in November and December. It only makes sense to protect all precincts equally. I often hear that, people bring up that, west part of the county has too many issues that conflict with the east, yada, yada. And I agree. However, the math speaks for itself. And how else can we surmise anything else but that if this issue is not resolved? What is the fix? So I come up with 2 ideas. Balance the voting precincts or add 2 more precincts. Balancing the existing precincts may prove to be too much when weighed against the value of adding two precincts. The average population for a precinct with 13 precincts is 10,274. The average population for a precinct with 15 precincts is 8,905, a much more manageable number all the way across the board. From election integrity issues, day-to-day polling operations, post-election inspections, to name a few, are valid reasons to reduce the size of our precincts. Further, it would lend itself to be easier to meet any needs arising from community of interest needs and proposals. If nothing else, it is atrocious that one precinct has 20,000 more people than the smallest. Next slide, please. So, recapping so far. Reschedule primaries and filing date, fix the zip codes, fix voting precincts. Next, let's get to the topic at hand, redistricting at the county level for commission and school board. As stated earlier, I believe the school board and the commission voted to nest the districts, so both will be the same. If one board has issues, I guess they can raise issues as it needs be. Let's talk about the breakdown of measurements of population. The release of this data from the Census Bureau was delayed throughout the year. It has placed us in a time crunch to meet the Board of Election criteria for the current filing date in December, 29 days away. Remember, I'm asking for the filing date and subsequently the primary dates to be pushed back to allow us to review the data and give the community a better chance of feedback. There are 3 areas of measurement that we will look at as defined by the census. If you care to check out the definition, census.gov you can look at, but for our purposes, know that one is bigger than the other and helps show the population of a given area. Slide 9, please. I think that's slide 9. The census tract is a larger area composed of block groups. You will hear me refer to them as CT. In Western Harnett, census tract 71312, it's kind of in the middle there on the left side of the map. It's a medium color. It's kind of rectangle in shape and has a bend to it. It's a rectangle shape goes down from Western Harnett High down 27 to 87, and then back up Alpine, finally ending up back where it started. That little area right there has 7,000 people. And also, as you can see, there's 28 census tracts that make up our county. Slide 10, next slide. Making up census tracts are block groups. You can see there's a lot more division here. There's these are block groups. I'll refer to these as BGs. In 71302, which is the same little census tract, there are 2 BGs. They're known as 1 and 2. And there in the county, there are 67 block groups. Next slide. This slide here, you can see all the little gray lines, and there's 2,000 of these, and I wasn't sitting on my computer clicking each one to highlight them, so so I didn't do that. Within block groups are entities called blocks. Blocks are one of the smallest measured entities in the census. These make up your neighborhoods and subdivisions. As an example, the street I live on is a block. The next street over is another block. Each could consist of a few hundred people. There are 13 townships in Harnett County, 13 voting precincts, 5 commissioner districts, and 5 school board member districts. There are 28 census tracts, 67 block groups, 2,486 blocks in Harnett County. These 2,486 blocks is a core of what makes up these districts that we're talking about. Next slide, please. Back to the math again. There are 133,568 people that live in Harnett County. In order to make up the commissioner district, you divide that by 5. That equals to 26,714 people per district. What also must happen is that one of the districts needs to be a major minority district as per the Voting Rights Act of 1982, aka the VRA. This means that one of the districts has to have a majority of minority voters in order for them to be undue influence from a majority populist set of voters. As such, the attorneys have come up with a map set that makes District 1 even longer and circuitous than the present maps. The maps that I was working on were from last week, and I guess this morning they showed us number 5, which in my opinion is even worse than what I was working off of last night. Everyone that looks at the map of Harnett County districts cringes when they see these districts. You have to. These new maps only make it worse. District 1 stretches almost 35 miles from western edge of north near Johnsonville Elementary School to the east edge of Dunn by I-95. Further, as it stretches across the county, it has no less than 5 tendrils reaching out from the main body of district. Unfortunately, clear vision of the map was not issued for review, so I can only surmise that from what I can see from the fuzzy version I have. In one spot, it actually looks as it narrows down to follow just the width of Highway 87. I would like to read from a few excerpts from documents I've discovered while doing my research. What I found is that in response to the VRA, there was a Supreme Court case in 1986, Thornburg versus Gingles. This is where I hope my lawyer. Next slide. The yellow outline is existing boundary and the colors are proposed boundaries. Many issues came from this case, but the most important regarding our issue are the 3 tests to find out what is now known as community of interest should be established. The first test is called compactness. Compactness, 35 miles across. A blurb from Loyola Law School, Redistricting 101, where the lines are drawn in discussion over Thornburg versus Gingles. The first asks whether it is possible to draw districts that so most voters belong to a geographically compact racial, ethnic, or language minority community. Racial, ethnic, or language minority community. Compactness has never been precisely defined in this context, but generally refers to the populations that are not being particularly far-flung and where boundaries are fairly regular without extensive tendrils. There's 5 of them. The first Gingles condition basically tests whether a sufficient large minority population is geographically distributed so that they could control a reasonable district. Compactness, extreme tendrils, reasonable district. I don't need to describe anything further. All you have to do is look at that map. A phrase that recurred while I was doing my research was geometric boundaries or shapes. As an example, in this version, District 3 and 4 seem to have geometric shapes. Next slide, please. Our townships have shapely boundaries. Our commissioner district should marry these boundaries more efficiently. You can see the 13 townships here. Next slide. The second test is contiguity. Back to the proposed map here. The National Council of State Legislators defines a minority group as politically cohesive, meaning its members tend to vote similarly. This is hard to find in Harnett County because how can you establish a cohesive group across a 35-mile stretch? I looked at the results of the 2020 elections. First, there were only 203 African-American Republicans who voted as compared to 16,509 African-American Democrats that voted in 2020. Next slide, please. But how does this convert to the ballot? When looking at the countywide race, I looked at state Senate seat 12. Both candidates were white middle-aged men. The Republican candidate got 34,911. Democrat got 21,732. Trying to come up with a way to do the research for a countywide race, I figured the lieutenant governor race could be a good race because Mark Keith Robinson is African American, and he was running against a white female. In that race, the Republican candidate got 35,200, and the Democrat, a white female, got 22,122. The numbers are virtually the same, so you can only surmise that the numbers are based on party and not race. As I stated, I'm not sure how to test number 2 can be proven clearly, since both races and virtually the same totals is based on party and not demographic. The third test is written I chose the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. It says the minority must be able to demonstrate that the white majority votes sufficiently as a bloc to enable it usually to beat the minority's preferred candidates. The concern with this test in Harnett is that the party lines are definitively aligned with race. When looking at the registered voter rolls for November 3rd, 2020, you'll see 26,030 registered Democrats, 29,776 registered Republicans, and 25,693 independents. Of those registered, 49,701 were white and 17,222 were black. And there's kind of back up with these numbers. There again is no discernible difference between the third test of Thornburg versus Gingle. Next slide, please. Only 13 more slides. To further stipulate issues with this role, as already described in Loyola's law paper describing the first test on geographical compactness, Kansas legislature further stipulates on a change of verbiage from majority-minority district to community of interest. 2002 guidelines from Kansas state social, cultural, racial, ethnic, and economic interests common to a population of the area which are probable subjects to legislation. So this goes back to the whole compactness thing, that Kansas is defining their guidelines based on social, cultural, racial, ethnic, and economic interest as opposed to one by themselves. There are too many factors to play in our county to just pick one version. While there are some 20,000 African American populace in this county, it should not cause an effect on the 16,000 other defined but uncompacted minorities to include Hispanics, Asians, and multiple race voters. It can only be concluded that the decennial period, the guideline of choice based on Kansas 2002, must be of economic interest. The fact of the matter is that even if you take the top 16 blocks with 30% common of interest value, you can only get to 39%, as I show up here on this. These right here, these are the 16 top block groups that I've gone through, where I compared the population, the total population, with the total of African Americans, and you come up with the percentage. You run them through, and you come up with 39%. We can't get to 50%. We can get to 39. We can get to 41. We can get to 42. In fact, there's only, out of these, there's only 2 block groups in the entire county with a population that exceeds 50%. Both of those are out there over in Dunn. Each one of these colored areas is a block group, and the darker the color means the more densely populated it is, and then the ones with 50% are over there in Dunn. Incidentally, choosing the top 10 block groups, you still only net 43.4%. This is why submitting proposals that can only reach 42% may not be the right thing. Why would we continue with a practice that does not achieve what it sets out to achieve? Why would we not just adjust the practices so the areas of economic growth would prosper? That I feel is the most important thing right now. I think for all of us as a whole in the county, is we need economic growth. So next slide, please. Again, to recap, this is where we are so far. Next slide. One partial remedy for this concern is to add 2 more districts for a total of 7. Quick math: 133,000 people, 5 districts, 26,000 with a minority of 13,000. However, if we switch this down, if we add 2 more precincts to 7, this will drop that 26,000 number down to 19, and it'll drop the 13,000 minority number down to 9. A much more usable and malleable number. Incidentally, counties like Lee County have 7 commissioners, and they are much smaller than we are. That's a decrease of 7,632 of the total, and 3,816 of the minorities in each one of these districts, which we can, like I said, better manage. More manageable in order to create a community of interest district based on racial interest. Next slide, please. A factor I was not able to discern is the impact of the population of Linden Oaks military housing area, which is circled down there on the left. While they have their own elementary school and middle schools, upwards of 600 students from base housing use our high schools. Their families use our communities, our resources in Western Harnett part of the county, our roads, law enforcement, gas, food, just to name a few of the possible 3,000 or more people or so that live there. Next slide. Speaking of which, how much growth has really occurred in Western Harnett, and is the population density as much as expected? We know that Harnett County is 600 square miles. Western Harnett is about a third of that, with a landmass of 200 square miles making up those townships out there. Next slide. Earlier, we mentioned CDPs, census designated places. Where are they? They're the two out there in the lower left corner there. We created these the last 2 years because we realized we needed an identity and we needed boundaries. Incorporating is a 5 to 10 year process in which it's too far away, but we needed to do something like this. As you can, Anderson Creek, which is the one on the right, has 13,868 people. There is a census tract. Spout Springs, the one on the left, has 11,040 people. There's a census tract, that rectangle-shaped one that I earlier referenced, 713.02, has 7,000 people. That's 32,000 people, making this densely populated area bigger than the city of Sanford, bigger than Fuquay, bigger than Morrisville. If we were to incorporate that whole area, we would be roughly the 31st largest city in North Carolina. I mentioned zip codes earlier. We need our own zip code for our area, not one for Sanford and Lee County. This will help to bring economic influx. With the makeup of our population and the already determined numbers of precinct and district, there has to be a contiguous precinct in Western Harnett, compacted to meet the needs of this densely populated community. Districts 5, District 1, District 2, District 4, all commissioner districts in one area do not allow the residents of the most populated area of the county to have a true voice. This is taxation without representation. These new proposed districts are even worse. As you can see, with the addition of Lexington Plantation extending the tendril even further, you can see the narrow district covering Highway 87. Next slide. You can see the number 5 there, the number 5 down at the bottom. Just to the left of that, there's a single yellow line. That's Highway 87. I don't know. And that circle. This isn't even Plan 5 that they just showed us this morning, which is even worse than this. But I mean, the people in Lexington Plantation have no idea this is going on because we haven't given them enough time to react. Next slide, please. This district is roughly, this is like the outskirts of District 1. This district is nearly 35 miles in length from Johnsonville through Lillington to Dunn, 35 miles. Next slide. In this slide, you can see the blocks that we have described to make up the proposed extension for District 1. What it also does is makes District 5 go in almost a complete circle. If you were able to see this, you can. If you look at the number 5 on the right side, you can see the bluish gray. You can see the curve there by the yellow. When you look at the map on the left, you can actually make out the block groups that will make up that area. And I'm just trying to figure out how we make this area up, and this is where it came from, and this is how it's done. But again, that's a tendril, and based on the Supreme Court case on those 3 tests, these tendrils are without merit. There's a definition: packing, pushing as many minority voters as possible into a few super concentrated districts and draining the population's voting power from anywhere else. It appears that's what's happening here. Next slide, please. This is one of the slides I was using to try to crunch my numbers, to try to make them all fit and to try to see what was going on. On the left side, you can, in the green, you can see those are the numbers with 5 districts. 26,000 is 5 districts. That's total population, and the 5 is with the minority, and then the 7. If you split it up into 7, and then you see the differences there on the right. But you can look at these here and you can see that it's really, really hard to get to the percentage that we need to get to in order to make the communities of interest an effective measure in order to come up with our redistricting. We're better served to come up with economic realms and reasons to do this. Next slide. Just because this came out, and this just came out last week. This is the new congressional district, so that everybody can be informed. That's Congressional District 4. It changes. We got Harnett, Johnson, Cumberland, Sampson, I think a little bit of Wayne there. That's the U.S. Congress district. They just voted on this last week. Next slide. This is a House district. That little green spot in the middle is the new district. It's doesn't have an incumbent in it. So that's a free district. So over the weekend, there's been a lot of phone calls happening about who's running for District 6, but that's the new maps for the State House. Next one, please. And then this is Senate. As you can see, Lee, Harnett, and 12 switch from being in Johnson down to Sampson. Next slide. So, in conclusion, I don't know how long I spoke for. Hopefully I made some good headway. I understand. I want everybody to be valued. I really do, and I hopefully I was respectful with my case here. To recap, to reschedule contact the state and law, whatever legal people, reschedule the primaries and the filing date so that we as a people can have a chance to look at these maps. I don't have the answers. I mean, this is just me coming up with one answer. There's a lot of people here that are probably smarter than me that can come up with some answers, but we haven't been given a chance. We haven't given time to be able to react to it. Fix the zip codes, fix the voting precincts. We need to add 2 more. 25,000 in barbecue is unheard of. Really sit down and address community of interest zones for proper interests, and fix the districts of 5 to 7. And as everybody's been waiting to hear, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Farina. It's obvious you put a lot of time and energy into that presentation. Very, very well presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got to leave.
Mr. Jaggers?
I've got to leave to do our meeting. I didn't know if anybody had any questions for the school board.
Anyone want to ask any questions that would pertain to the school board? I think they have a 10 o'clock call meeting this morning.
Oh, if I'll just go ahead and make my comment, because I do want the school board to hear my comment. Claire Jones, Board of Elections. You guys do have a lot of work and a very little bit amount of time to do it in, so I would not trade places with you with these maps and the Board of Education as well. The only thing I want to really stress is that between the commissioners and Board of Education, that you try to keep your lines the same. The main purpose behind that's voter confusion. It's a lot easier for voters to know if they live in District 1 Commissioner, it's District 1 Education. That consistency would help a lot with voter confusion. It also helps us administratively because the more splits we have, the more ballot styles we have, and as you guys all are well, our election workers are just people like us, like people in here. And even though we train them, we give them the tools, the more ballot styles you have, the more room for error there are. So if we can at least try to eliminate that as much as possible, I think the school board and the commissioners keeping those lines the same would be beneficial to everybody involved. And that is really what I wanted to stress today.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
I can
Mr.
assure you right now we're not having any battles within other districts other than the weather.
Yes.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaggers. Appreciate you being here today. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Karen Reichert, and I'm from District, what is my district?
4.
District 4. And I have several things, but since Roger just showed the state redistricting maps, I'd like for everyone to know that the Princeton gerrymandering project gave our state a grade of F. This is compared to what Colorado received as an A. So be aware of that as citizens of this state, that there are issues with how these maps have been drawn. Now, to address today, I would like to see more information about the final map, Plan 5. We've been given a cursory review of that, but there's no demographic parameters shown as there have been the last two redistricting meetings that we've had. And also, we need to see the maps laid out on tables so that we can see what areas have been changed. We can't see that from this kind of map. It's too gross. It's not detailed. So I feel like, for fairness, I mean, this is redistricting for our whole county. We need to be able to see this information. In the event I have anything else, let me review my notes. No, I think that might have covered it. Is it going to be possible for us to see these laid out?
Get ready to
maps?
ask that question. Thank you for your comment.
Okay.
And, Chairman, now I know after the meeting had already started, it wasn't out there, but I went ahead and put Plan 4 out there. I can put the other one that actually has demographics now. It's not Plan 5, but as Craig has mentioned, the only change is around that Livingston area and up around Andrew. So really the populations, all the populations for 1, 2, and 5 will be unchanged from what I can lay out there and show you. Very little population change between 4 and 3, between Plan 4 and Plan 5. So I've got a clean version out there. I'll go ahead and put the.
So are you saying the total population, or are you also addressing the percentage of black?
It has everything on here. I'm happy to.
For Plan 5?
Well, I've got it for 4. Unfortunately, 5 came late. I don't have 5 printed out.
Well, what was the reason for changing plan to Plan 5 then?
Again, as Mr. Schauer mentioned, it was to keep communities of interest together, so kind of keeping Andrew together up near the Wake County line. So 4 reaches a little further into Andrew, and then and we had to do a set-off for the population. So in 3, you see it come snake down towards Lillington. That was a trade-off.
Yeah, it's you know what you're talking about, but from our point of view, we can't make
So only change
any
on here.
decision about that.
This was in 4. So this changed to 3, and then up here they reach it. But you see the star up there. So part to the right was in 3, and now it's in 4, and it was to kind of keep communities together. And they had to do the change to keep the population even. So if you made the change up here, there had to be an offset, so the offset was made down here.
Wow, so they're really very disconnected. Is there any chance that area is the area involving the recent concerns about the asphalt plant?
Well, it's hard to see on here, the river. So I think that's the river right there. So the only change has been anything that's been south of the river, and then everything up north that hasn't changed. And I think that's the river. Then the area you're talking about is somewhere in here. I don't have the.
Yeah, that's okay. I can't really see
But
that.
That's always been 4. That's not changed there. It's everything south of the river. South of the river goes to change in here.
What's the star for?
I'm sorry?
What's the star for?
The star are the commissioner seats,
Okay.
and the circles are the school boards, the current members.
So is that little area that you were just pointing to, there's a green circle there, that's what Jason Lemons is?
That's Mr. Lemons.
That's Mr. Lemons or Mr. Lemons? Okay.
Yeah, this is Mr. Lemons right here.
So can we put that map out to look
So,
at it and have time
unfortunately,
to review it?
I don't have this, but I can put Plan 4. Again, Plan 4 is exactly the same except for this. And I wrote on it up here as best as I could. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get a big map printed before this meeting. But I wrote on it so you can see everything else is the same except for this part and this part. And I'm happy to point it out on the map that's out there.
Would it be possible for us to get our GIS folks to do a detailed map of the Plan 5, I guess it's called. Yes, draft Plan 5, and
Yes.
find somewhere in this facility where we could display those so the public could come in and view those
We
this
can
week.
have those printed today
Okay.
and lay them out for the rest of the week. We can do it. It's just
Yeah.
unfortunately the time crunch.
I understand. I know it's been a time crunch, but yeah, I think that would be good. Then folks can come in and look and see in detail where their community would
So I'll
fall.
put this other one that has the demographics on here out there as well. This
Sure.
is Plan 4, just so we can see it on the way out.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, if we could try to do that, then that would be helpful for our folks, I think.
Why don't we delay the hearing until we see it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not even online.
It's not even online. It's
Excuse me just a minute. Yes, sir.
Richard Chapman, 5220 Christian Light Road. Forgive me for the following stupid question that I'm about to ask, but since all I really know about these are what I see on the screen for the past half hour, explain to me that after these maps go into effect, why District 3 has any representation. It looks like 2 incumbent commissioners are living in District 1. I don't know where Commissioner McCoy, which dot or which star is hers, and I assume you, Commissioner Matthews, are the other star.
Yes, sir.
Legally, by what authority would you continue to serve once these maps are accepted if you don't live in the district? And do we then have to invalidate your seat? Have a special election?
There might be days I would welcome that. And I will say, that star I do not believe is accurate. It is on the other side of the river, which would put it into District 3.
So you actually still continue to live in District 3?
I do, as the, and I can let Mr. Appel stress that.
It's hard to see just because the size of the map, but the chairman still is in District 3. There's just a strip, his road is covered in District 3. It's not in 1. So it's still there, and that's not a change. It's just the rest of Keith Hills has been moved into 3.
Okay. So acceptance will not disrupt the entire board? Okay.
It will not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. And could, Ms. Jones, I heard a question about delaying it. Can you speak to the timeline that we're under here?
So, do you want me to come back to the time?
Yes.
So the deadline to have maps to us is November 17th. But the sooner you can get them done, the better, because we have to manually do those changes. But the 17th is the actual deadline. Any extension to that deadline would have to go through the legislators. We don't have any hand in that, and neither does the State Board of Elections.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
And on that, Charles Morton, 8611 Way. Since this is a public hearing so that we can have a vote on this, and we, the public, have not been able to see these maps, we would ask for that extension, at least to this hearing, for at least a week so we can look at these maps. And if not longer, then through the legislature, because this is not serving the constituency at all.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Margaret Morton, and I live at 86 Gwendolyn Way. Why weren't these maps online for the public to review prior to a 9 a.m. public hearing when most people are at work? Why?
You get these maps, so we're working on a tight deadline, and that's not because of us, that's because of the whole pandemic and getting all these maps worked out in various versions, because we're now on version 5. It's just that, again.
How long have you had version 5?
Version 5 came over this weekend.
This weekend. And we're having a hearing today when the public hasn't been able to review them?
Again, version 4, which came out midweek, not this past week, came out midweek. Again, version 5, other than those 2 little changes I mentioned, everything else is the same on version 4.
What I find really intriguing to this whole situation is the little brown sliver there that falls under Mr. Matthews, that's my neighborhood. That's very convenient. And then nobody knew about it until now at the meeting. This stinks and reeks. It really does. This is not in the best interest of the community you all serve. And sir, where is he? He probably left. That was an eye-opener. An absolute eye-opener. This whole situation with the asphalt plant has led us into looking into other issues by peeling back the onion skin. And we don't like what we're seeing. And this is just proof of it. This is not in the best interest of the people that you serve. And the fact that Ballard Woods conveniently now is out of your jurisdiction over the weekend. Over the weekend. How does that even happen? Do you guys not have a family life? Yes, this reeks and we're not done.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning, Commissioners. Rebecca Brock, 5220 Christian Light Road. I am asking that you delay the vote if you're planning on voting today and you give a true public hearing at night so that working people can have time to review the maps and come so that you hear from everyone.
Right. I don't believe we're planning to vote today, are we, Mr. Wood? The vote will be at the regular meeting which will be the next meeting.
Wonderful. Between now and then, I think a public hearing that allows people to hear, for you to hear what they have to say, and these maps to go online with the data should be common practice, especially now that it's getting down to the next Wednesday is the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And the newest versions of the map, please.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else move, do we have anything, Ms. Capps, that came in on email or online? Okay, and I'll call this public hearing closed, and I will move on to item 4. I believe we have a need for a closed session. Vote in closed session to return to open session. I'll call us back to order and recognize Mr. Snow with a point of order.
Mr. Chairman, in that the last item before your closed session was the public hearing regarding the 2021 redistricting, the county legal staff is just asking the board while it's still fresh on your mind if you had any further directives of us on how to proceed as far as the process going. Our deadline is the 17th. The next regular meeting is the 15th. And then the question of whether, based on comments from the public, you want to have any other public hearings, whether it be at night or otherwise, or any other things you want to bring to our attention while it's still on the night.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. I think my intent was to let's get these GIS to do the maps for the Phase 5, I believe it's called. Let's make them available somewhere here where people can come and see them. That would give them the opportunity to talk to their commissioner or Board of Education member throughout the week. I do think it needs to be as an action item on the agenda for the 15th, but I will hear from my fellow board members whether or not you think we need to have another public hearing. It's not required, but certainly we could do that if you would like at that meeting on the 15th. Is that pretty much how everybody feels as far as that's about as quick as we can get to make maps available? Of course, get it on the website as well. So.
Right, and since we have 5 now, we can obviously get those print out pretty quickly.
Right.
I'm hoping maybe by the end of the day.
Okay, sure. I know there's some turnaround time there. Okay, and Mr. Snow's question about a public hearing, what's your pleasure on that? Another public hearing?
Not opposed to it.
Commissioner McCoy, you okay with that? Commissioner Weatherspoon? Okay, so we can do that. We can add another public hearing as well after the public has a chance to review those maps for that Monday meeting, and go from there. Does that give you the direction you need, Mr. Pam? Mr. Snow? Okay. All right.
So your directive is on the agenda that the clerk puts in the public hearing for that agenda meeting?
Yes, sir. And then a vote on the matter following that.